literally checking my list. I have a list of things that I want to talk to you guys about. So I wanted to talk about like how you actually create change. And this isn't going to be super motivating. Like, yeah, I don't know. It's just like on such a much smaller scale. So I've been thinking about like a lot of your comments recently have been about like, I don't know, certain topics that I talk about. People are like, well, I don't even know how to say this. Like a lot of you recently, I've been talking to you about like changing how we view certain things, and that is the only way that we can like, you know, I don't even know how to say this without it sounding stupid. It's the only way that we can like changing how we think about things is the only way that we can like change how other people see them, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So I was kind of thinking about like, where do you start? Like, how do you actually make that happen? And for me personally, I think it's this kind of thing. Like, I wasn't really able, so I'm obsessed with podcasts, okay? Mostly listen to like comedians' podcasts, but a lot of the comedians that I listen to also like they talk about like regular. They're not just talking about like comedy shit or being funny. They're also like talking about like their real life experiences and just like real life shit and things that they've gone through and conclusions that they've come to, I guess, and opinions that have changed over time. And I think that's something that everybody goes through naturally. But I can tell you that like for me personally, my opinion of myself or how I view other people or how I view just like the world has gone through a pretty drastic change. Now you could say that it also has to do a hell of a lot to do with the self-reflection that I've been forced into during this past year of quarantine. Because I've spent a lot of time just home doing, you know, analyzing myself, I guess, and my mental state. But I also have noticed a very different, a significant shift in how I view myself and all those things that I just mentioned since I started listening to podcasts. Now, I'm a person who loves conversation. I love dialogue. That's probably one of the reasons, one of the main reasons that I started this channel. I love conversation. It's very illuminating. And I don't feel particularly motivated or positive or creative when I'm not having these kinds of conversations. So I need this kind of thing. But I also love to listen to it. So I love listening to lectures. I love listening to just a couple of comedians talking about like how they grew up. I just think that I just love the human experience, I guess. I've always loved listening to other people and like the things that they have to say. And I feel like through particularly listening to podcasts, I have been able to kind of like take little lessons or little like things that they say here and there, connect them to my life and be like, yeah, I don't really like, I think I've gone through that too. And I don't really like this particular thing about myself or like, oh, I never considered that before. And now I'm like looking more into it or I'm just thinking about it more. Basically, that is how I think you create change. I think the only way that you can do it, like, okay, for instance, take two people who have polar opposite views on like everything. Like say they just don't agree on fucking anything. The only way that you can change their minds and or yours about something is to have a conversation like this, where you're presenting ideas in this manner, things that you've personally been through, things that you've thought about, but also take in what they're saying, no matter what. And putting yourself in that position, in their position, because that's the only way that you're going to actually like understand each other, I think. So I really think that like conversation, I feel like that's another topic that I'm probably going to have to make a video on relatively soon. Just given like, I don't know what's going on in this country. But I think it literally all just comes down to conversation. It's not this like big revolutionary thing where we can be like, oh, okay, well, we can just do this and it'll change everything. It's a very slow process. And I think it genuinely comes from just like conversations like this, and trying to just like reach more people. So I think the best way for example, take that video that I did recently about friends. A lot of you pointed out that the problem in that situation was that my friend didn't reach out and communicate how that person's comment affected her. She just kind of like took it in, internalized it, and it made her feel really shitty. And I agree to an extent, because there's a lack of communication there. So upfront communication with like friends or family or whatever, I think that's like where you start. And that's how you create that change. And it has to be this tone. You're not going to ever change someone's mind about something for good by yelling or getting upset or being like overly, hostile or too passionate. Because like, I think passion can sometimes become hostile. Yeah, it can become very hostile. Because I've been thinking recently about like, there are certain things that experiences, thoughts, just things that like I went through as a kid that I want to prevent my kids from going through. And I think the only way, and the only thing that I would really change, like the only thing that I've been thinking about this, I'm like, how am I gonna tackle this subject when I have kids or when they're this age and this thing happens? Like, how am I gonna do that? Literally all I can think of when I run those scenarios in my head is just talking to them and being completely honest about it. And I think that really is just the best thing. Because if I can get this back to like creating change, if it's not like making sense to you right now, because I know I'm like all over the place, I'm trying to think of like how I can change how they are going to view them, like change for the better how they're going to view themselves in this world with social media versus like how I did. You know, like you're trying to like make improvements, obviously, like when you're a parent, you're trying to make improvements, right? I hope, over like how you grew up. This is such a boring video. It's literally just me talking about how we need to talk to each other. That's all it is. But I think it's so important, and I just feel like people are so afraid of having certain conversations, so they kind of avoid it, and like myself included, this is like I think when I'm a parent, I'm gonna be good at it, but it's not the easiest thing for me to like talk honestly about things. You know, like I'm a pretty subdued, I tend to retreat a little bit more, especially when it comes to like very personal things. And it's something that I'm getting a lot better at, clearly. And I've been working on. And I think that like, it's very easy for people to kind of like retreat and not really tackle things but it's so damaging. Like not having communication with like anyone, like relationships, like romantic, friendships, family, whatever. It's so damaging when you don't communicate. And when you don't communicate and everything is just kind of like swept under the rug, nothing changes. And if anything, it just gets buried and like gets so much worse, and like all the bad things just kind of like elevate. So yeah, basically what I'm trying to say is you have to talk to each other or else nothing's going to change. And that's it. That's literally it. You have to talk. Do it. Thoughts? This is a bad video. I don't think I'm gonna upload this. Because like, what am I even talking about? It is true though. It'd be cool if I don't know. That's it. It's literally that simple. What do you think? Do you agree? I kind of feel like everyone should agree with this. But I would appreciate it if you would let me know like how you would implement this, I guess. Are you trying to implement it now? I don't know, like have you reached this conclusion as far as changing certain things? Because I mean like one person can only do so much, you know what I mean? So that's why, you know, I've come to the conclusion that all you can do is like talk to the people who are closest to you, engage in this kind of a conversation, try to understand where they're coming from, and try to help them see where you're coming from. Pretty much, it's boring, but like truth, you know what I mean? All right, great talk.